Have you ever been in a Gran Turismo 7 race, and when you do the race, your tires seem to wear so fast, you have no idea where they went. Then you go and see another driver, and all of a sudden they have so much tire lifespan left, and you wonder, how do they do it? In this video, I'm gonna teach you 5 mistakes that you could potentially be doing that are ruining your tires. And here are the tips on how to fix them. Let's go to the video. So, if you've ever been in a Gran Turismo 7 competitive race, whether that's a daily race or a league race, or maybe one of the Nations Cup or Manufacturers Cup events, you might be wondering, how can I make my tires last long? And the fact is, if you make your tires last longer, you reduce the amount of times that you have to pit or change tires, and you can also maintain your pace without risking any loss of grip. However, it is quite an art to master. Some drivers have found a way of how to do that in particular races, but usually beginner or intermediate drivers tend to fail at that task because of these potential 5 mistakes. So let's break them down so that you can see what I'm talking about. The first mistake that you may be making is choosing the wrong car. And this happens very commonly, especially when you start racing in Gran Turismo 7. Let's be real. Sometimes we just drive a car because we like the style, we like how it sounds, and we like the way it feels. But in reality, some races are going to demand you to use a car that can sustain the strain of the race. And by this, I mean that some cars are much better with tire wear, and those are the cars that you may have to be choosing if you want to stand a longer stint within a race. Choosing the right car can be the difference on finishing the race with at least some tire wear left, or being at the brink of popping the tire up because you're about to run out of tire lifespan. And this can happen anywhere from a very short one-stop race all the way to a very long endurance race. It can be the difference between saving some pit stops or having to pit more times with the hope that you have to put more pace on the track to actually catch up for the lost time on an extra pit stop. Let's show an example of how this can be noticeable between 2 different cars. So in this experiment, we're going to go through 1 lap of Red Bull Ring on racing soft tires and with a 30-time tire wear rate. We're going to use 2 different cars for this scenario. In the first instance, we're going to have the Peugeot RCZ, which is very commonly known for being a very stable, beginner-friendly car. Usually not as powerful as many other cars around there, but quite light, quite agile around the corners, and it's very efficient at keeping some tire lifespan. So we're just gonna do 1 regular lap throughout the track, no unusual racing lines or no unusual braking points, and after the lap we're just gonna finish and go straight into the pits, and then we're gonna switch over to a completely different car, which is the Audi R8 LMS Evo. As you notice, both cars are actually MR cars, which means that they have the mid-engine and rear-wheel drive. That way we can comparably go through the different drivetrains as well. But the R8 is actually more powerful, but also heavier than the RC7 in this case. And the R8 is actually quite noticeable for having not so great of a tire wear lifespan. So as you can see, the racing lines are pretty similar, and we're just going to bring the car into the pit once again. And you'll be able to visually see how the R8 has more tire wear than the Peugeot RCZ from the images compared right here. A very easy fix of this mistake is just choose a good car that has good tire wear lifespan through the track and combo that you're going through. Especially if it's a daily race, you'll be able to notice how other drivers and which cars they're actually using, and you can use that as a reference to know which car you have to pick. And yes, sometimes the cars that you end up choosing are going to be a little bit more difficult to handle, and you might have to get some time to get used to the track and car. But it's part of the Gran Turismo experience as well, where you get to test different cars and different combinations and make sure that you get a little bit of everything with every track and car combo that you test. Now, if you're racing in another setting such as a league or an endurance race where you are only allowed to choose out of 1 car or a handful of cars and none of them are particularly good at tire wear, then there's some adjustments that you're going to have to do throughout your actual race pace and your driving throughout the race. And that leads us to mistake number 2, which is overdriving your car. And what does this mean? Overdriving your car essentially means that you're pushing too much out of the limit of what your car is able to give you. And this can be represented in the way how it handles, in the way how it attacks corner entry and exits, and also in the way how it responds to certain inputs that you give it. One of the main common ones is that you usually tend to brake way too late into the corners. And by saying braking too late into the corners, it might be that you're actually braking at the right braking reference. But remember, the way how you drive a qualifying lap, it's not the same as the way how you should drive a race lap. And essentially, in a race, you're gonna have multiple laps that are gonna take some life out of your tires. So every time that your tires get a little bit more strained and wear out a little bit more throughout every lap, you have to readjust those braking references, and you have to start braking ever so slightly earlier lap by lap. So that way you can essentially brake at the right point for how much tire life you have, and also avoid getting into points where you demand way too much out of your brakes, but also out of your steering, which would eventually cause even more tire wear to your car. This is usually also combined with a lack of proper trail braking and braking techniques. And what I mean by this is that some drivers would tend to try to brake and steer at the same time, which is a big no-no if you want to save tires. And it is because the car cannot handle all the inputs that you're trying to give it at one single time. Remember, the car is only limited to a certain amount of grip, and it can only perform based on particular inputs that you give it and the combination of all those inputs. Essentially, you only want to throttle and brake as much as possible while also combining this with enough steering inputs so that you don't cause the car to understeer or oversteer or lock up. So in a more visual example, let's go back again to the track and see how this can be experienced. So once again in the RC set, going through Red Bull Ring, same conditions as in the first example. You're gonna notice how I'm gonna brake very late in this corner, pretty much at the 100-meter board, and try to brake and steer at the same time. You'll be able to notice that because of how much of the red bar in the braking input was displayed. And this is the amount of ABS activation that it's applied to the brakes. We'll see it right again on this corner, where you're gonna notice how I brake and then I try to steer at the same time, even going a little bit over the curb. Now I just want you to pay attention to how we're gonna take this next corner as well, even though it's a very slight dab at the brakes. Now I want you to notice how much I'm putting into the steer. And this is another big misconception for most drivers, by thinking that the more they steer, the more they get out of the car. But in reality, the only thing that you're causing is a lot of understeer and demanding so much out of your tires that the car is not capable of giving you the steering that you want. And it's only wearing the life out of the tires. Now we'll see an example of how to do it the right way. So back again on the same track and in the same conditions, what you're gonna notice now is how I'm gonna deliberately brake a lot earlier into the corner and apply less braking input. So I'm braking way before the 100-meter board, and I'm trying to be more conscious about my trail braking, which means that every time that I try to steer into the corner, I release the brakes ever so slightly. That way, I'm respecting the amount of grip that the car is able to give me. Once again, I brake way before the 100-meter board right here, and I take a very slow entry into the corner, making sure that my inputs are very smooth and I'm not demanding that much out of my tires. I do the same approach right here, and I try to coast ever so slightly more so that I can then apply less steering input but still get a good corner exit, and I'm preserving a lot more life out of my tire. So that way you can actually use these techniques in your races so that you can save a lot more tires and you can stand out for longer stints in a race. And here you can see the impact that overdriving has on your tires. Look especially at the front right tire, how worn out it is versus how you can save a lot of life out of a tire with smoother inputs. Another mistake that you may be making that it's also related to overdriving the car is actually exiting too early out of the corners. And what this actually means is that anytime that you hit a corner, you go through the simple process of going through corner entry, braking into your braking reference, but then you want to push very hard out of that apex and you want to attack the corner exit as fast and with as much throttle as possible. What happens sometimes is that by doing so, you demand more steering out of the tire, which means it demands more grip and it wears them more. So one simple fix that you can do to correct that is just to coast through the corners a little more. In the race, you might find out that you actually have some flexibility to take corners a little bit more slowly than you would do in a qualifying lap. And what this is going to cause is that you would essentially demand less of your tires and you would preserve them more. And by doing that, you would compound more tire life that would translate into race pace along the way. So this is what coasting more through the corners looks like on the track. I'm going to be braking here at turn 3, and you're going to see how I'm just going to roll the car through the apex and then very gently squeezing the throttle out of corner exit. That way, the amount of steering input that I have to apply is a lot smoother, and I don't have to push and demand too much out of the car on corner exit, which will eventually compound into more tire wear. I'm gonna do the same here in turn 4, how very gently I apply the throttle, and then I'm gonna try to aim and do the same even in mid-speed corners, where I'm just gonna dab the brake and trail brake into the corner, roll the car through the corner, and then apply the throttle very gently as well. Same thing over here in this section one more time. I'm not stabbing the throttle that much, which will eventually cause some wheel spin and potentially snap oversteer, which will also wear out your tires a lot quicker. This is how you can effectively preserve some tire wear, as you can see from my front tires right there. Now, moving into mistake number 4, this is one that most drivers usually don't want to have happen, but sometimes it does when you're overdriving the car or just trying to push towards the limit of your car. And that is basically avoiding slidings and skids. And what this eventually causes is a very high peak of overheating in your tire. Now, Gran Turismo 7 does not have a strict temperature meters for your tires, but there is a slight edge out of each of the 4 tires that will flash red whenever you're completely overheating your tire. And the moment that you see this, it's eventually a sign that you might be pushing way too hard. You're demanding much more out of the grip that is available to your car, and that will eventually subtract some life out of your tires as well. Now let's see how this visually reflects on your interface in Gran Turismo 7. And I want you to pay specific attention to the temperature meters for the tires and also the tire wear bars. We're gonna have a very little slide, well actually not little, quite significant slide over into this corner, and you see how the temperatures spike all the way up to almost 150 degrees of both the front and rear right tires. And also you see how much they actually drained the life out of those 2 tires on the right side of the car, thanks to that slide. And this leads us to our 5th and final mistake that you may be doing that is actually wearing your tires more than you want to. And it is actually more of an intermediate to advanced mistake, but if you're just starting on Gran Turismo or just have a few months playing the game, this might help you disguise whether you're actually keeping good wear and tear out of your tires or not. And that is not tracking your tire temperatures. Now, this will require you to add an extra gadget to your gameplay to make sure that you can actually track this. As I said before, unfortunately, Gran Turismo 7 does not have an actual telemetry of the tire temperature. Let's hope that they can actually put that on Spec 3. But there are actually some free and paid resources that you can download both on desktop or on a mobile phone, even an iPad or tablet, that you can put to a side when you're actually racing in Gran Turismo 7. Some of the options that you have available are Ezio Dash, Telemetry Racing, or Coach Dave Delta. A lot of people actually tend to use these so that they not only can track their tire temperatures, but they can also track their actual race telemetry. And in this way, they can compare their laps and also their throttle, brake, and steering input to determine whether they're gaining or losing time throughout a particular lap in more real time than Gran Turismo 7 allows you to. But the key here is to actually be able to track the tire temperature while you're racing as well. Usually the optimal operating range of a set of tires would be somewhere in between 80 to 90 degrees Celsius. So whenever you're out in the track, you want to make sure that the inputs you're applying to your car are keeping your tires within this temperature range. The colder they are, the more you actually have to demand of them to get the grip that you want out of the car and to have the best performance possible. But also, the higher they are, the quicker they're gonna deteriorate and wear out. But you're gonna have to be conscious about this so that you can adjust your input and preserve some life out of the tires until your next stint. I personally use Coach Dave Delta, and I'm not sponsored by them, but I just like the app. So it's just a recommendation that I can give you, and there's plenty of other content creators or streamers that actually have codes available so that you can get discounts in case that you want to get involved in Coach Dave Delta too. And that's it. These are the 5 mistakes that you might be making and also some 5 quick tips on how you can fix them. And if you're looking to improve your racecraft as well, make sure that you check this video right here where I have 13 tips that are gonna make you win your first e-lobbies.